Welcome to the Better Together podcast, where we look for ways we can more effectively serve the Lord and be effective in ministry. Today we have here with us Mr. David Brown. He's the director of the Free Will Baptist Foundation. And Brother Brown, thank you for the good work that the foundation is doing for our denomination and for the cause of Christ.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Now, we have a difficult conversation that we're going to have today. We're going to talk about what to do if you find yourself in a situation where your church is closing, how to do that well. I want to start by saying, though, that the National Association of Free Will Baptists really has as one of its main missions to do what we can to strengthen churches, help churches be healthier and more effective. And I will mention we have the Refresh program with Free Will Baptist North American Ministries. And the idea behind that is to help churches that are plateaued, help really all churches to grow and be more effective. As an arm of Refresh, we also have the Rekindle approach, which is where coaches can come alongside churches and help them and strengthen them. And not all that long ago, we put out a webinar when this same resources where we talked about taking churches and merging them to churches and helping them be stronger and more effective. And so we really believe if people have utilized the resources that we provide, and we're available anytime, folks can call us or email us, and we'll do everything we can to help them to be stronger and to be more effective. And we believe if people do take advantage of those things, they will be able to have a strong church, and we'll have fewer churches close. However, decisions that churches make now, or make 5 or 10 years, make now and then 5 or 10 years from now, you can find yourself in a situation where if you've not chosen really to address the coaching and these other things, you can be at a point where you might have to close. So that's where you come in, my brother, and there are ways to do this, aren't they, that can continue to be a benefit for the cause of Christ. So tell us a bit how this goes, Brother David. A church calls, and tell us some things the foundation does to help these churches in these difficult situations.
Well, unfortunately, we've been helped in a number of these kind of situations, and the best case scenario, I think, is for the church themselves to call us before they have made a final vote to close, and allow us to be there. A lot of times at the closing is a good idea, and basically their last business meeting, they would vote to give the property to the foundation, and then they would select the ministries they'd like to benefit with the proceeds, and it all goes in the minutes, which becomes a legal record. They give a quit claim deed to the foundation so that we'd have the right to sell the property. And I think that part's really important. It is much more difficult for a closed church that is no longer functioning to sell a building than it is for an existing 501c3 charitable organization to sell it. So it's better to give it to us before you actually close, and that way we can handle all the legal paperwork and the selling of the property and everything that goes along with it.
Very good. So really, it's a good idea to put all your options out on the table. And so yes. The churches that are calling us, they've often been thinking about this for a long time. Sometimes they're down to a handful of people, and often those are individuals that are older in age and are having sometimes some health issues, and it's kind of complicated. Mm-hmm. What you're saying is it would be helpful to get the leadership, get us involved. Like, we're thinking about coaching, we're thinking about perhaps merging, or maybe we're going to just close the church, and to go through that before you actually shut the doors, before you actually close.
Right. Yeah, it needs to be an official action of the church to give the property to the foundation. That makes it all a lot smoother. I mean, if they are going to close, obviously, we would like them to exhaust every other means before that happens. But if that's where they're at, then to bring us in before they have their final business meeting to close.
Okay, and I'm sure people are like, well, oh, of course, you're wanting us to give this resource to the foundation, and then, somehow that makes the foundation rich. But really, in that final business meeting, the church decides what happens with the resources that are left over. And so I know you've had one church that they were concerned about. They had a cemetery, and I believe they set up a trust where until the Lord returns, there's resources to take care of the upkeep of that cemetery. I think you've had another church. You want to tell us about that? Not tell us the church, but they were a bit more of a success story in closing, actually, weren't they?
Yes. Yeah. Well, recently a church closed, and the building or the property turned out to be 7 figures, and so the amount of money and what they decided to do was to benefit 5 ministries, 3 of them national, 2 of them related to the state they were from, and they divided it equally between the 5. And the amount of money that's going to be generated is going to be in 6 figures every year until the Lord comes back. So, this is a really good situation because, the church is continuing to give to all these ministries. As a matter of fact, they're giving more to these ministries than they ever gave when they were a church, and so it's not like the church has really died, because the church is still alive through the endowment that it creates. And that's what we generally encourage is to do it in an endowment form. You don't have to. I mean, you can give, you can sell it and give outright gifts to whatever ministry you want to. But if you choose to endow it, to me, I like that approach better, because the church continues to give to the various ministries that they've supported while they were a church, and kind of gives them the opportunity to exist until the Lord comes back.
Mm-hmm. And so, really, you've had some churches, they gave money outright to a ministry that they might use for operating or to retire debt, but you all are talking to them a lot about doing these trusts, and it's kind of interesting. We all know how bad and how difficult debt is. So it's really the reverse of that, isn't it? You've got the principal that's never touched, and the interest that's earned off of that investment is continuing on in the ministry, and really it is a way that church never dies in that manner.
Yeah. So just to give you an example, our spending policy is that we pay out 5% on our endowments. So, if a church is worth $1 million, that's $50,000 a year to be going to ministry, which is not a small amount. And it's interesting, this church I was referring to has asked that their church be listed still on the giving reports. For instance, to International Missions and Welch, their top giving churches, will continue to be listed there, because the amount they're going to give to those ministries will qualify them to still be on those lists. So it's their name will still be out there.
Mm-hmm. That's good. So that's a way for it to continue to go. Now, there are some bad stories, and these involve often a church trying to sell things on their own. Maybe talk to us about some of the pitfalls of not getting a nonprofit like the foundation involved in this process. What can go awry? What kinds of situations can happen?
Well, of course, some of these I'm not aware of the fine details on it, but I know the general things that happen. I know in some cases churches have closed and they have given the proceeds to the members, which is totally illegal. As a matter of fact, could subject them all to trouble with the IRS, because you've received funds from a 501c3 organization. And the law is that it has to go to another 501c3 organization. So that's the one thing you definitely don't want to do. But in other cases...
Let's stop there just for a minute and unpack that, because people may be saying, what's a 501c3 organization? It's a tax-exempt organization.
Right, exactly.
Like a church. And so when people give money to their church, they get a tax receipt usually at the end of the year. They end up writing that off taxes. And so the IRS is saying, okay, you gave money and you got a tax, you got a tax benefit, and actually you gave that to yourself, which is fraud.
Yes,
So
yes.
you can't do that.
Right.
I mean, you can do it, but it's illegal. But it's also immoral. It's
Absolutely.
wrong because people are giving to the Lord's work. We think about the book of Malachi. We think about Jesus and his and the Pauline epistles. Talk about the importance of giving. This was not given to buy stuff for ourselves, and so that's why it's so helpful when you're taking it and it's going to something godly. Right. It continues on with the Lord's work. So, sorry to stop you
That's
there,
all right.
but it's important for us to think about. You don't want something that was given to God used in an ungodly manner, or it's not
even for yourself.
Yes, it's not just illegal. We will stand before the Lord one day and give an account for those things.
The other situation would be where a church decides to kind of do it on their own and not involve another 501c3, such as the foundation or another ministry, because the problem there gets to be when you're getting ready to sell it, the church doesn't exist anymore. And so, I have seen cases where this will wind up at the Secretary of State's office in the state you're in, because the Secretary of State is trying to determine, okay, who's going to really benefit from this and make sure that it's going to another charitable organization. And so you don't really want to do this on your own. You're better off to have another. It doesn't have to be the foundation. You could give it to your state association. You could give it to. You just have to give it to somebody before you close the church, because otherwise you're going to run into problems trying to do it on your own.
Mm-hmm. And so, so you would need to make that decision in that kind of last business meeting, because really what your local Secretary of State in your state is trying to do is make sure the law is followed. Right. Now, if you don't involve an entity like the foundation, what happens is then you get lawyers and government officials involved.
And not only that, but the amount of money that would have gone to ministry is going to lawyers instead of ministry. So
it gets tied up and it diminishes it. So that's why it is important. So like if you are in a state, another important contact is your state promotional leader, talking to them about this, and they tend to talk a lot to our foundation as well, and talking through the process. Any other pitfalls that we need to be aware of or watch out for?
Well, I think we've pretty much covered them, but it's just, this is not something that you can treat lightly, and I know people don't treat closing the church lightly, but as far as the disposal itself, it's a highly legal process, and it's not something you just do by the seat of your pants. You need some expertise in it.
Mm-hmm. And we'd be glad to help with that, so we encourage you to call the National Association offices, call the Free Will Baptist Foundation. We would help you get involved with your state promotional leader if you don't know who that is, to tell us where you're from, and we'd look for ways that we could help you through this. It's not something we want to do alone, but it is something also that it's a sad thing, but it can end up being a great blessing to help start other churches, help strengthen other churches, and continue on with the work of the Lord.
Well, and just like I was talking about the church before, I mean, what is the purpose of the church? The purpose of the church is to reach people for Christ, to disciple those who are there. And in this case, what the church I was referring to, they're still reaching people for Christ. They left some to Welch College. They're still discipling people, preparing people for ministry. They're doing what the church is supposed to do, even though the church is not there anymore. So it's a good thing.
And even in their state ministries, they're helping their states. I suspect there will be resources there for church revitalization, knowing some of those ministries, and they're doing all kinds of good, godly things, and all of those ministries desperately needed those funds. So a good thing that church did in a sad situation, but it sure is helping those ministries that are receiving those resources.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you, Brother David, for stopping by and talking to us about this. Don't go through this alone. If you're a trustee or a deacon, you're in a church out there struggling with this, it's a difficult thing, but we encourage you to contact us. We'll do our best to help you along, to provide assistance to you. And give us your number in a way that they can contact you, Brother David.
Well, I mean, the toll-free number is 877-336-7575. Or they can also email us. Our general email is just foundation@nefwb.org.
Okay.
Or myself, you can email me at david@nefwb.org.
Excellent. Well, thank you for stopping by and being with us today, and thank you all for listening. We encourage you to like this podcast on social media or the platform that you're listening to or watching. Subscribe if you can, and give us a review. Every little bit helps. So thank you, because we truly are better together.